You chance upon a daydream that catches your interest and you begin building a narrative. Scene by scene, you construct a visual timeline, adding characters and plot as faces appear and disappear in transition. You have constructed the perfect visual narrative, but now you want to turn to words on a page. Today we ask our panelists how they transition the images in their minds down to a novel or novella. This week, the stalwart C.L. Cannon gives us books that you may want to read if you're a fan of Sandman Slim by Richard Condrey. Near the end of our show, we will discuss the upcoming week in our Go Indie Minute. As we break for the day, our panelists read from their own works named The Epilogue. So turn on your mental projectors and let the mind movies roll. It's time for another dreamlike episode of This Week in Indies with your host, SM Hillman. Hello, everyone. Welcome to This Week in Indies. I'm your host, SM Hillman. There we go. There's a line in the movie Communion where the main character is speaking to the aliens, one presumes. And the alien doppelganger says, "I am the dreamer and you are the dream." Is this how it works for novelists? Visualizing a novel before writing is not something all authors do, but it happens to enough of us to be notable. Today, we want to talk to our panel about how they turn those mental images in movies into words on a page. But before we get too much, and before I talk and mess up the production, let's go ahead and get our panelists to introduce themselves. We will start with Brian. Hello, Brian.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm Brian Tan. All things weird and exciting and kind of goofy. Find me here on Go Indie Now. Happy to be here.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you being here on a Sunday morning. Next up, Juliet.
Hey everyone, I am Juliet Rose. I am a multi-genre author. You can find me at AboveTheRainCollective.com. I am currently at an event today, so you get to see things going on around me. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Hopefully the event is going well.
So it hasn't started yet, so yeah, it starts in about 30 minutes.
Gotcha. All right, next up, Tony. Welcome, Tony.
Hey, I'm Tony Serecchia. I am a prose and audio writer. I also have a screenplay in pre-production with Scary Times Film, and you can find all my stuff at tonyserecchia.com.
Perfect. Appreciate you being here. Tony, is this your first time with us?
No, I think I did. Is it my first time, Joe? I did another one.
You haven't been on this show before. You've been on other things we've done, but not this one.
Yes. Yeah. Awesome. It's my first time on this one.
Welcome. And last but certainly not least, Joe Compton.
Hi, I'm Joe Compton. If you don't know who I am, you're in the wrong place. This is Go Indie Now, and that's me. And I'm here. I'm an independent author, independent filmmaker, and I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. And we're glad to have you here. Joe, I want to kick off with you. You do movies as well, and you're a writer. It's both you have a leg in each of those things. Mm-hmm. How do you visualize your novels? What's your process for that before you write them?
I mean, the one thing I love about writing novels versus writing screenplays is I add more than I subtract. I write virtually the same way for both, but I am doing a lot more editing on the screenplays because you don't want to have a whole lot of detail in a screenplay, so it's bare bones most of the time. But I like to I hate this term, word vomit. I'm trying to think of a better way to say that. But I tend to write in stream of consciousness, just go, and I'll sit for hours and write, and typically it starts with something that triggers in my head a scene, or it actually usually is dialogue that triggers in my head, and I'll write that down, and then I'll start to visualize it from there. And it's the visualizing process is a lot different for me in both mediums, but for novels, it's basically just spitting out the words until I feel like I've exhausted myself, and then I usually go back and add in the colorfulness of it, the visual, the more stimulating visuals like color, all the five senses. So that's basically how I do it.
Right. So I'm curious, if you say you usually get a bit of dialogue, do you actually see the characters speaking
Yeah.
the dialogue?
Yeah, typically. Yeah. It's usually like a noir film. Like somebody comes out of a shadow with and then all I see is their lips moving and they say something, it's that's kind of how it goes for me. I don't have any like contextual visual for that. It just kind of see their lips moving, basically.
Gotcha. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Tony, what about you? How do you visualize and turn that into words?
So I think it's a very similar process with the Skin Man. When I sent the first version out to my reading group, they said it read very film-like in that the paragraphs were all short paragraphs, like 4 or 5 lines, which would be kind of the same as an action line in a screenplay. And most of my paragraphs are very short and punchy. So I generally will go through and describe what I guess every scene is a little bit different. Like some scenes I can see it. Like the excerpt I submitted for you guys is I saw this scene more than I heard it. And then later I put in the sounds that were there. Sometimes though, like there's an opening in I think the first or second chapter, there's a scene in an office and I actually heard that whole scene. Right. So I wrote all the dialogue and then went back and added the the details of what the office looked like, what the one guy's wearing a hoodie and somebody else is wearing some other branded t-shirt or whatever. So it really just, as the scene comes, I generally will write what I'm seeing or hearing, and then I'll go back with details for. But even my prose, the only thing different about my prose from screen or from audio is that there's a lot more internal stuff, right? Because if you can't film it or you can't hear it, you don't write it in film or you don't write it in audio. But with prose, you can do everything, right? So you can spend, I don't recommend it, but you could spend 300 pages inside somebody's head, which is, I think, is nice because then you're not relying as much on the visual stuff around it to tell the story, because some of it is being told through the characters' emotions.
Is there any rhyme or reason to the times where you hear it versus times where you see it, or you just think it's sort of like just how it comes to you?
I think it's just how it comes to me. Because I write so much audio, I'm a firm believer in that dialogue is the most important part of the story. So I'm going to say I tend to start with dialogue, but but I want to take advantage of the medium. So in the first chapter of this, it opens up with somebody watching a girl kill a zombie, right? So that's a very visual scene, but in his head, right, his thoughts are probably what came to me first, and then I switched it because you don't want a novel to be all dialogue, right, or all internal dialogue. So then I switched it to, well, how would I film this? What would I show, right? And so that's where I went with that. So I don't know that there is really a rhyme or reason.
Gotcha. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Juliet?
Yeah, so I think for me, I do so much like mental work on a story before I actually even start to write anything down. And I think for me, it's almost like living in a parallel world. Like there's my life and then there's the life that's going on. And I'm just kind of like mentally recording what I'm seeing and hearing. I always say I'm kind of like a passenger on my own books because I feel like they're happening and I'm just transcribing as it goes along.
That's interesting. So where do you think a lot of those ideas come from?
Insanity. No, I really don't know. I'll just be driving and like I said, these scenes start playing in my head. These kind of stories start kind of forming themselves out and I'm paying attention. And it's why I don't start writing until like it's really started to solidify that story and I understand what the story's trying to tell me. I really don't know where stuff comes from. It really just literally comes into my head as scenes.
Yeah, excellent. Awesome. Thank you. Brian?
I know that especially if I'm doing a fight scene or any sort of combat, I acted out myself, using my own background, because I want there to be practicality. I want it to be something where I want the reader to be able to actually see it happening as if they're watching a movie. And I want it to be somewhat realistic. Now, if I'm using characters that are supernatural or enhanced, obviously I'm going to do it where, sort of make it like fantastical, but still based in some level of reality. Um, and a lot of that just comes from my own training experience in, hand to hand and just things that I've seen in film.
So when it comes to like a fight scene, you can mentally walk through that in your head based on some of the experience and the training you've been through. Is that right?
Correct. I know that, I actually worked on the fight choreography for a film, an indie film that never got made. So I sort of drew on that just from, like I said, just from doing martial arts for pretty much all my life, doing self-defense demonstrations and things of that nature.
Awesome.
Can I piggyback on that, Sean?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I also, what I do is similar. I don't act out the fight scenes because then I wouldn't have a back anymore. But I do read aloud all my dialogue first time through. Just I'll have, and this is where it gets crazy. I'll have conversations, the conversations that I write together. Like I will read them as a conversation just to feel like it's a natural flow. And I always find, I mean, comes from, and Tony can probably relate to this, being audio guy and the screenwriter. This comes from my film background. I think the most helpful thing to any filmmaker, any screenwriter, is to do table read, because you become aware of how other people read your stuff, and so I used to have my brother do it with me, but I've had JD do it with me before too, where we will read it. We'll sit down and read together and read it out, just so that I can hear somebody else read it, just so that I know that it's not clunky or it doesn't sound like stupid. So I do a lot of that. I utilize a lot of my filmmaking stuff in that respect. So
yeah, if I could just jump on that real quick, a table read is, especially for the audio stuff that I do, is really the most important part of the process. I mean, I listen and I do kind of like Joe does, where I'll read the lines and I'll do different, stupid voices for each character. And then I'll even use like Word or Scrivener's kind of read it to me for the dialogue, because it's going to be flat, but if it sounds good and it's flat, you're probably on the right track. But that first table read, after the producer has cast all the actors, I kind of treat that like a workshop, right? And it's like, well, you guys know you're going to get revisions to the script. So this first time we're just reading it through, and then that's where you get to decide what's falling flat, what sounds good. And then with novels, it's the same, or with prose, it's the same thing, right? Where I'll read everything through, because I want everything to have the rhythm, not just the dialogue, but I also want the rhythm in the prose as I'm going through that, right? It should read almost musically as you're going through it, I think.
And if you have a good team that it's like having beta readers for novelists. If you have a good table read team, they'll have made notes for you as to when they said something differently. Like if they had said, like, I always find that's really awesome.
Yeah.
I'll have actors come up to me and go, yeah, I changed this one line. You might, if you want to change it in the script, that's how I said it, if you heard it. And I really appreciate that kind of stuff too. It's like having a good beta reader. I know
it is, and
I know we're
I was just going to say, yeah, that's. I mean, I've had, and I guess on the other side of that, I've had actors, give me better lines, but I've also had actors come up to me and say, "Did you read this out loud before you gave it to us to read?" And then I'll read the line they're talking about. And I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's horrible." Not so much because of like it was written poorly, but it was like I think one line, one of the actresses had to say taxonomy, taxonomical and syntactically in the same line, like a couple words from apart. It's like it worked in my head, but when you read it out loud, yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize for that.
That's a little bit sadistic, but that's okay. That's what actors like that kind of thing.
Yeah, they live for that stuff.
Yeah. All right, let's take a look at some more comments. We have AF Stewart saying hello. Hello, AF. Always good to see you. A.L. Mengel, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Good to see you again. I'm very visual when I write. I discuss the omniscient narrative that has opened some of my novels in my head. The scenes and sequences play in my head like a film down to the smallest detail. I find the 5 sentences important, like Joe mentions, as after structure editing, my novels receive another edit that's primarily focused on 5 senses. Makes sense. And after retell edit, always show, don't tell. That's just Sean. That's Sean's editorializing. Many of my novels start from dreams I've had, and others have started from novels I've written. We'll get to that actually in just a moment. I act out sword fights. AF says I act out sword fight scenes or monster fights to get a sense of movement and space. That makes sense. So, Brian, start with you. Have you ever taken a dream and turned it into, even a daydream, I guess, and turned it into a novel or story?
The Bryce Creed books came from Reoccurring Nightmare, and the one of the most important fight scenes in the second Bryce Creed book, The Hunted, is literally taken just from that nightmare. So absolutely. A lot of my stories have come from nightmares or, just stuff like that. I think my current work that I'm almost done with, and I've been talking about that for months now, and I'm actually put a little bit more words into it. That sort of came from sort of a daytime nightmare and just a horrible what if. So yeah, a lot of my works come from dreams and of that nature. Yeah.
Oh, excellent. Juliet, we know you have the road hypnosis thing going for some of that, but does it come from other dreams, other things like that?
Yeah, my book Expectation of Pain was completely based on a dream. I just really added in more information to it. But I had a dream about these disabled children that were on an island, and this woman was like, their ward, and she had this giant psychedelic toad that she carried around, and there were robots. And so when I woke up, I was like, that's got to be a book. So that one was pretty much completely from a dream.
Did you immediately go to your computer and start crunching words, or did you take notes?
Yeah, everything has to simmer for me. So it was something that I don't think I actually wrote for probably 6 months to a year, but I knew that I was going to be writing it. Like I just knew I had to fill in the blanks, So I had the kind of outline from the dream of the story. I knew I had to built it out. So I took some time to do that.
Awesome. Excellent. Tony?
So I've had solutions come to me in dreams because, and I mean, probably everybody does this, right? You're stuck on a part, and you've painted yourself into a horrible corner, and you need a solution, and it's just not coming to you. So I have had those things, like answers come to me via dreams, and I guess it's just because, right, the brain just keeps working even though you're sleeping. But I've never had a dream and said, oh, I need to turn this into prose, at least as far as I know.
Gotcha. How often do you get you're seeing solutions through dreams and things like that? Does it happen very often, or?
It did. Yeah, especially when I was working on the Harry Strange radio drama many years ago. Yeah, it happened. It was almost like, oh, okay, well, I'll just dream about this for a couple nights, and eventually I'll have the answer. Now, not as much these days, because I tend to outline a little bit more. I'm a little bit ahead of where I am. So,
gotcha. Awesome. And where's he at, Mr. Compton?
Like Tony, I haven't ever dreamed a story. I've done the opposite, where I was writing at 3 a.m. and then go to sleep, and then I'm dreaming about what I just wrote about. I have, however, if I get stuck or something to that, I go and meditate, and that usually clears my mind, and then I'm free to create. So I use meditation for visual effect sometimes. But yeah, as far as dreams go, I've never had a dream where I had to write it down. I'm lucky if I remember them at all. So,
how often do you get solutions from things like meditation? Right? How often does that work for you?
almost every time. I know how to get to that space. So, having done it for a long time, it's always something like I've even done it on a set. Like I've gone into a corner and just sat in a corner and meditated for like 10 minutes while they were doing a setup or something, just because I knew it was a problem moment in what we were trying to create, and then to create how it came, and then it comes to me. Like I can visualize it. Like I visualize the actual setups and everything like that, so I can visualize where the camera goes and who says what and things like that. Even though we have a finished script and have a setup planned, which, of course, DPs and lighting guys and sound guys love me for that because I'm changing stuff constantly. But on set and not before. Hello, pre-production, right? But that's every time I've meditated, I've come up with a solution. So
that's excellent. We have a couple more comments. Vanessa is here. Hello, Vanessa. I had to do a quick restart. I had a dream about ballerinas being shoved alive into crypts, and then it was closed with a deep thud. That became the premise for Ballet as a Crypt Dancer. That makes a lot of sense there. Thank you for sharing that. All right. While we have a moment, let's go ahead and hear from CL Cannon for this week's. Hold on, I got it. Indie Connection. If you're a fan of Sandman Slim.
Hey guys, CO Cannon here from Fiction Atlas Press, bringing you another Indie Connection. This week I'd like to tell you about some indie books that you might enjoy if you're a fan of Sandman Slim by Richard Kadrey. The first book I have for you is by the one and only Bob Magoo, and it is called Bringing Home the Rain, The Redemption of Howard Marsh. Howard Marsh is a lot of things: a liar, a thief, a poor man's wizard. He's the product of a miserable county with more dirt roads than paved, where poverty and loss is the order of the day. He's a man haunted by his past, and has yet to find any reason to try and piece himself back together. Where we find him is at the bottom, eking out a living as a water witch, a copper thief, a finder of lost things, living in a storage shed and trying to maintain what's left of the frayed relationships of the few family members who will still talk to him. Untrained, he uses the drugs that ravage his body to fuel his magic. Within these pages, Marsh will work to unravel two supernatural mysteries, as only a redneck wizard can, poorly, and with much cursing. In Bringing Home the Rain, he has to piece together just why it hasn't rained in months, within the bounds of a perfect circle just south of town. And in Dancing with Your Demons, he is on the trail of a missing woman whose now infamous son once burned down a church. He is Howard Marsh, the magician. He's a travesty, but he's the best hope Jubal County has. Definitely go check that out from our friend Bob. The next book I have for you is called The Nine by C.G. Harris. Hell is not what you think. It's bone-chilling. Gabe is a good guy making the best of eternity in a place not known for its hospitality, until he is recruited by Judas Iscariot, yes, that Judas, to join a sect of double agents dedicated to sabotaging the mayhem being released on Earth. Armed with a skill set of irritating quips and zero knowledge of any modern world, Gabe must figure out how to work with his beautiful, tough-as-nails partner without botching the mission or revealing his true identity. Or facing the wrath of hell will be the least of his worries. The third book I have for you is called Seraphim by Leslie Swartz. Wyatt is a typical schizophrenic firefighter with daddy issues when his life falls into shambles. His wife leaves him, he loses his job, and the voices in his head are getting louder. Just when he thinks he's finally made a breakthrough, a woman interrupts his therapy session, setting his life on a course more unbelievable than his hallucinations. Gabriel is a messenger of God, and she loves humans. Like, all of them. Beautiful men, gorgeous women, and sometimes both at the same sexy time. But when she's called to save the world from a long-forgotten enemy, she drops everything and gets to work. 4 angels, born human, must join with Lucifer and the Vampire Queen to stop the sadistic Lilith from destroying the gate between heaven and earth, enslaving humanity, and slaughtering millions. And the last book I have for you is called The Long Way Down by Craig Schaefer. Nobody knows the seedy underbelly of Las Vegas like Daniel Faust, a sorcerer for hire and ex-gangster who uses black magic and bullets to solve his clients' problems. When an old man comes seeking vengeance for his murdered granddaughter, what looks like a simple job quickly spirals out of control. Soon Daniel stands in the crossfire between a murderous porn director, a corrupt cop with a quick trigger finger, and his own former employer, a ragged boss who isn't entirely human. Then there's Caitlin, brilliant, beautiful, and the lethal right hand of a demon prince. A man named Faust should know what happens when you rub shoulders with demons. Still, Daniel can't resist being drawn to Caitlin's flame as they race to unlock the secret of the Etruscan box, a relic that people all over town are dying and killing to get their hands on. As the bodies drop and the double crosses pile up, Daniel will need every shred of his wits, courage, and sheer ruthlessness just to survive. Daniel Faust knew he was standing with one foot over the brink of hell. He's about to find out just how far he can fall. Okay, that's all for me this week. I'll see you next week on the Indie Connection. Bye!
Thank you, CL Cannon, again for your Indie Connection. We always appreciate that. All right, I'm going to throw this out to anybody. Do you ever fantasy cast characters in your stories? Do they ever have the face of, say, a famous actor or famous anybody, right? I mean, Joe and I are famous. I don't know anybody's like, it's like, oh, I'm going to make them my protagonist. But does that ever happen?
Oh, yeah. I've done it a ton of times. I still do it every now and again. Winston Duke is either Winston Duke, Francis Ngannou, or Michael Jai White, or Bryce Creed. Actually, I think Michael Jai White could even be John Baker. And those are the ones that just come like right off the top of my head. Chloe Brubaker in the Bryce Creed novels, I see Christina Hendricks or Kat Dennings as her. So yeah, I fantasy cast all of my characters. I think a lot of it is just to allow me to have a better idea of what they look like.
I will say I've been killed in books and stories, and you're welcome to use my likeness and myself in your stories. But my one caveat is I have to die, so you have to kill me, which I think nobody on this panel would have a problem with. But I don't fantasy cast at all because I've learned I don't even like for screenplays where I know I'm going to cast certain actors in that I know people I want to be involved in the project. I don't even fantasy cast for them because what I've learned over the years is when they go in audition and when they talk, they want to do a different part in a different way and they want to make it their own. Even if I have set up the character to the nth degree comparable to this person or whatever, they're going to take it and make it their own. So I stopped doing that because it doesn't help me. And for practical reasons, it doesn't help me at all. So.
Gotcha. Understood. Tony, Juliet?
Yeah, I can't say that I do, but I'll sometimes, like, when I'm kind of forming those ideas in my head, I'll have, like, maybe a famous person in the idea of that character's space, never really intending to go forward. That it's, like, almost like a jumping off ground. So, like, as I start to develop the character, that usually fades away. So I'll start with the idea, but then it fades out, and that character becomes their own person who isn't the famous person.
Gotcha. Tony?
Yeah, So the only time I fantasy cast was a producer reached out to me about doing something TV with Harry Strange, and then of course little did I realize, first I went down the road of, oh, I want this one guy and this guy, and all the potential Harrys and Liliths and such, and that was my first really experience with television, and it was then that I learned that just because they're interested doesn't necessarily mean you're ever going to get to casting. So generally, no, I don't do fantasy cast.
Again, going to throw this out to anyone. A lot of times the advice we have through the show is meant for new writers. So, what would you say to a newer writer, someone who does a lot of visualizations, right, about disciplining themselves, taking those visuals and putting them on to the paper?
Don't worry, you're not crazy. We all do it.
Yeah. I would definitely echo that. Don't feel weird that you talk to yourself in the mirror, because we do it.
Yeah, I would tell them, pick the part you want to write. Pick the part you think you're better at and write that first. If it's all the actions or all the, and when I say action, I don't necessarily mean fighting action, but if it's all the descriptive scenes, write those blocks. If it's all dialogue, write all your dialogue first. There's no wrong way to come into this.
And seriously, decide how you want to write, because
right.
You may not be a novelist. You may want to be a novelist, but you might actually be a screenwriter and write better screenplays. So
right.
If you're visualizing things and it turns out that you don't have all the visual aspects of it, you might be better off taking that and trying to put that into a screenplay format and trying that first before you try to force yourself to make a novel out of it. Some
right.
of us were born to write novels. Some of us were born to write movies. It's just the way it is.
Right.
You can't force that. And any creative outlet, you don't want to coax yourself into not being creative, right? I've been there. I've been there where I've tethered my creativity, and I can tell you I've never been more miserable in my entire life. So however it comes out, let it come out that way. Don't worry about, whether you're doing it right or anything like that. Just do it how you feel like you want to do it, and then worry about the right stuff after that when you start to edit and put it together. And I've had the harsh reality of submitting to like anthologies and writing novellas for anthologies and things, and they all say to me, and then it's because they know me. A lot of the places I submit to know me, so they go, you should just write this as a screenplay because that's what you really want to do. It's a movie in your head, and so I've had to come to the harsh reality that if I'm going to write a novel, I had to train myself how to write a novel differently than writing a screenplay. And, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, hell, sorry, novelists, but you make more money writing fucking scripts. I'm sorry, you just do. So.
Yeah, and I was going to say, along those lines too, is, one, don't force it. Like if you have these visuals, they need to come out, in the way that they are. And it doesn't always work. Sometimes you have these amazing visuals, but when you start to try to put it into, a novel or try to put it into something more formed, it peters out, it fizzles out, because the visuals are great, but they don't have the bones to write the story. So, I guess be kind to yourself and just try. And if it doesn't work, then, set it aside for later.
And always remember, and, to quote the late, great Pat Morita in The Karate Kid, if it comes from inside of you, it's right. How you write may not be how someone else writes, and that's okay. We're not all supposed to write the same. Our voices are our voices for a reason. And maybe you're a screenwriter instead of a novelist. Maybe you're a novelist instead of a screenwriter. Maybe you're a comic book writer. As long as you're writing, bro, it don't matter.
To paraphrase the great Pat Morita, your best writing still inside of you. Time to let out.
There you go.
Yeah,
and then kick Mike Barnes.
Yeah, and I was going to say too, like just because you have the visuals in your head, you have to be able to give those visuals to the reader. And so, like, I can't tell you sometimes I read something and someone has a great concept because it's in their head, but they're not effectively putting that onto paper so the reader can also see those visuals.
Right. And sometimes your reader might not see what you see. I mean, like me, it's hard for me to read first person novels because it's hard for me to grasp. I have to get the description of what I'm seeing from a third person perspective. Case in point, when I was reading the Hunger Games trilogy, and I'm like going back 10, 15 pages because I feel like I missed something. So just because you see it doesn't mean your reader is going to see it the exact same way. They might see it in a completely different way, and then they'll tell you, well, this is how I saw it. And you're like, huh, never thought about it like that before.
Right.
Oh, excellent. Awesome. Any last thoughts, folks, for taking your visuals and turning them into prose or screenplays or stage plays for that? It's not the stage.
Just kind of what Joe said, or somebody said it. There's no wrong way to enter this, right? If you're seeing it in your head, you just write it down. Nothing is going to be perfect the first time through, right? It's just your explosion of words on the paper is what you want to get through. And I recommend that people finish the first draft before they start editing the first draft. Like and I know some people prefer to edit as they go, and that's cool. For me, that doesn't work for me. I've got to get the whole story generally down, or at least most of it down, and have a clear ending in mind as I'm writing it.
Do you write your stuff in a linear fashion, like from beginning to end, or do you write your scenes and then
No, and it's weird. Yeah, no. Sometimes I generally write in a the linear fashion, but there have been, especially with Skin Man, there were scenes that haven't occurred yet, or that won't occur yet, that I've written, and now it's a matter of getting to that scene. It's almost like kind of like a signpost. It's like, oh, okay, well, I know I'm going to Charlotte, and this is what I'm going to do when I get there, but now I got to get to that point. So sometimes I think it helps. I mean, I never turn down a scene. If a scene pops in my head and I don't know where it's going to go, I write it down because it will probably be useful at some point.
And I know people on Scrivener have these on their Scrivener.
Right.
You can do this on Scrivener, but note cards, big help for me. I also write scenes, and hardly ever do they all fall in linear fashion. I move a scene around to another part of the novel. Even in the novel, I'll move it around. Like my first novel, I took the ending and made it the beginning. So it because it worked. It fit into the spaces I took. And this is just the old screenwriters thing, is I write all the scenes down in a note card, and I, mess them around and just kind of see where they fit. And that's how I do it. So because also as a stream of consciousness writer, I just go with the flow as I write. And so whatever I'm writing doesn't always end up being linear.
I've started using Microsoft Whiteboard for a lot of stuff, so that way I can reference it. I definitely want to start using that more for plotting, because I used it for Age of the Gods to sort of for world building and like what the different races do and their opinions on one another. But for the rom-com that I still affectionately call the other one that's sort of waiting to get finished, I've got to cut about 20, 30 pages. So I'm going to start plotting. And like I said, this Microsoft Whiteboard has been just like a lifesaver.
Gotcha. Well, look, Juliet has...
Juliet was having
her booth was wiped out.
She just got attacked by the Atlanta winds.
I just kept hearing.
So, Juliet, return to us when you can, if you can. In the meantime, let's go ahead and take a look at some of our comments. A.F. Stewart, I based one of my characters on Joan Griffith's performance in Hornblower. Yep, that's an excellent performance. Vanessa, I think for many people, screenplays are easier or feel more natural in part because most of our entertainment is visual in nature. Yeah, I think that's probably true. We see more stories than we will ever read.
I've been careful with that because screenplays are not easy to write sometimes. People think they might be easy, but they're not as easy as people think they are.
Joe, you just said,
I think, because you have
you gotta give people something.
See, it's weird because I remember, Joe, you used to tell me you should think about making your books as a screenplay just to see what happens. Now you're saying it's not as easy as I thought. Now it's like, well, no.
All right.
I think to Joe's point, screenplay has far more structure than a novel does, right?
Yeah.
You're 120 pages. You're only so many characters. It's far more structured. I don't think people get that. Like, you can't give me a
completely different writing style. I'm being
screenplay unless you're like Aaron
it's
Sorkin.
a different writing style.
I think if you're going to go that route, get the Screenwriter's Bible. If you've never written a screenplay before, get the Screenwriter's Bible read a screenplay so you have an idea of how it formats, because that's what I'm talking about for first-time writers. For anybody who's writing it out, screenplays are cool for that, but if you're going to actually make it a screenplay, then you should know the format going in, and then it's easy to find that. So it's not as hard as I make it out to be. So.
All right. So A.M. Engel says, for my screenplay partition, I turn description to stage direction. Vanessa says, oh man, I wish I could bounce around when I write. I tried putting it all together, stresses set me out. Yep, we've had that discussion before. A.M. Engel writes in a nonlinear style. Vanessa says, I didn't say they were easy. I mean, it might feel easier simply because we think in visual media now rather than written media. Yep, that's true.
Fair enough.
It can feel more natural.
Right. Fair enough.
I wish I could write non-linear. I mean, I've kind of started doing it in one of my another one of my upcoming works, and it's less non-linear, and it's just me bouncing back and forth to something else that I want to get to tell a larger story.
Having read the Bryce Creed books, I'm impressed that you wrote that linear, because it bounces around from timeline to timeline. So.
Oh, I added some stuff in though over time though too. Actually, wait, did I? I don't remember. I've been hitting the head a lot.
See, I envy people who can write linearly, because I wish I could have it all laid out for me right from the beginning, but I know better. You know, it's like I know I'm going to move stuff around. It's just that's my natural instinct to do that. So I just let words flow and not worry about it the first time I write something. You know what I mean? So
I think the Bryce Creed book was definitely a pantser. Because I would hope so. Yeah, me too.
All right, so let's go ahead and go over our Go Indie Minute. These are what's coming up this week on the Go Indie Now Network. Please chime in or check in or view in or whatever. Watch them. Leave a like and subscribe, please. All right, quick mention. Yesterday we dropped another new episode of Saving a Seat. Speaking of visuals, as Brian Tan and Joe Compton, who just happened to be here today, what a coincidence, reviewed not 3 but 4 films, 2 which were versions of The Toxic Avenger. Hey, give the people a quick preview of what they're going to see.
Okay, so we had our first negative review, I would guess, to say that. If it's fair to say.
It was
of an indie film that we didn't want to have a negative review, but it just happens. You know, when you do reviews, you have to be true to the review. And we did point out some nice things that the movie did. Hopefully, we did anyway. I hope the filmmaker's not too pissed off at us.
Yeah, we tried really, really hard to be encouraging in it as well. I think we both agreed that we kind of understood where the filmmaker wanted to go, but it just didn't get there for us.
And then we reviewed a movie that I think is super funny and about horrible people. We're getting into the point where we're getting a lot of movies about horrible people. Yeah. So we have another one. That's a comedy. And then the Toxic Avenger stuff. I mean, if you've ever wanted to talk about 1984's Toxic Avenger, I think we cover every single freaking minute of that movie.
I think we ended up talking more about that than we did the.
No, it's the opposite.
It's the opposite. Wow.
But I mean, there's only so much you can say.
True. Very true.
we make it very clear we're not comparing the two movies because they're two different movies, but there's one way that we both lean towards, and I won't spoil it for those who want to watch it.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much for showing us, or for giving us a preview of that. All right, so this week on Monday, 7 p.m., all times are Eastern time. 7 p.m., we have 21 Grams as Joe welcomes horror author DZ Hollow to talk Villains in Darkness. Tuesday at 8:30 p.m., Juliette Rose brings you First Time for Everything with her guest, Patrick Sedamino. Yep, there we go.
I don't know how to say it either.
Sedamino, I think it's how you say it.
He's a nice guy. I can just tell you that.
Wednesday at 8, AF Stewart, hello AF, welcomes Heather Fleischman on Trope or No Trope to debate secret villains. That should be a good one. But they're all good ones. And last but not least, our Saturday matinee puts us red carpet with some filmmakers who have great shorts in the Holly Shorts London.
It's a film festival in London that features short films, and I interviewed 3 of the filmmakers that have films in it.
Awesome. Excellent. All right. Looks like Juliette is back with us in some regard.
She okay?
Yeah, sorry guys, my tent literally just took off in the wind.
Yeah, we saw.
And of course it is, yeah. So you got to see the fun, yeah.
I was worried that you would end up in Kansas.
I just saw your feet fly in the air, so I was worried about you.
Oh, it was bad. I was like, and my daughter had just gone inside, and of course, as soon as she did, a gust of wind came and just took the tent through the air, and I was like, you got to be kidding me.
Take my breath away.
I might disappear. That is why I'll be chasing my tent down the highway. So yeah.
Oh my God, I'm picturing it. It is so deliciously hilarious.
All right, it is time for the epilogue, where our panelists read some of their work. So we're going to go ahead and start off with Brian. The book is The Enforcer.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So this is a flashback. Basically, Bryce Creed is he's just been reconnected with he's just been reconnected with someone that from his past, and this particular situation that he's in is really making him sort of reflect on his past. And this scene that I'm writing here is what's led Bryce to his overall journey for redemption and forgiveness. Bryce's mind suddenly reverted to another time, a time when he realized he had become a monster and wanted desperately to save himself. It started with a woman named Tabitha and her husband. His thoughts lingered to 1810, and in his first 100 years as a vampire, with only 10 years as an enforcer, he'd done things he was never proud of, things that made him feel ashamed when he reflected on them. Yet his existence at the time would not allow him to be burdened with such thoughts and would only weigh him down much more today. One needed to stay sharp in order to stay alive after no matter what the circumstances. Letting regrets linger in one's mind was the quickest way to wind up dead, Bryce thought. His presence had been requested by a master vampire in a relatively new 22-year-old colony that will one day be the global city known as Sydney in Australia. Bryce remembered very, very clearly that a human by the name of Tobias, along with his wife Tabitha, had run afoul against the master. Being a fledgling enforcer, a job of such pettiness was left to him, the youngest and newest wandering enforcer. Having just earned the opportunity of such a prestigious station, he leaped at the chance to go to Australia, as he remembered the books on the island land that Jazar read to him about Botany Bay and the criminals of Britain sentenced to the vast wasteland that once was. Bryce did not know how they had angered the master, and at the time he did not care. He had a job to do, and he always got the job done. In those days, he never bothered to ask questions. The eagerness of his youth and the excitement of the position clouded his judgment over such trivial matters as to why. He remembered patiently waiting in the shadows of their shack, quiet and devoid of all emotion, as though he were a machine. He could hear them, smell them, even before their horses were a mile away in the Australian wilderness. The thrill of the hunt was upon him as they grew closer to where he waited. For some particular reason that day, he could not keep the fury of the hunt under control. He felt the bloodlust within him surge to dangerous levels, and instead of resisting it, he surrendered to it. He let them pass as they headed home, and as his presence caused the horses to behave nervously, their whinnying grew higher pitched, but all he could do was chuckle as the moment of destruction was closing in.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Next up, we have an excerpt from Juliet Rose's Through the Surface.
All right, let me make this bigger because I'm really blind, so I'm going to make it big so I can read it. Let's see. He was running up the trail. He wasn't alone and could feel something pushing him on. As he approached the lodge, he could feel its presence. It was waiting on him. He ran inside and was immediately lost in a series of mazes. Each ended in a dead end with the mirror at the end. No matter how many ways he went, he'd always ended back at the mirror. He could hear a woman crying but couldn't find her. Just a reflection of himself over and over again. Exhausted, he stopped before the mirror and stared at himself. It was him, but not totally. It was like a part of him was missing. When he reached up to touch his image, his hand was not reflected back. He wasn't strong enough. He was fading away. He punched the mirror and it shattered into hundreds of pieces, revealing a hallway behind. He followed the hallway, hearing the crying getting louder. It ended at a door, and he could tell the woman was behind it. He pushed the door open and saw his mother lying lifeless on the floor. Iris was standing over her, holding a bloody knife. She turned, her eyes begging his forgiveness. He ran to his mother and crouched down beside her. "Why?" he cried at Iris. She shook her head and kneeled down, clutching the knife to her chest. "Because I am not alive," she whispered, and started to crumble into dust. Ledger reached out to her and felt her slip through his fingers. As she disappeared, she was replaced with the demon, its eyes boring into his as it lunged forward and drove the knife into his skull.
Awesome. Excellent.
My favorite moment in that book. It gets really awesome after that.
Fantastic. All right. Next up is The Skin Man by Tony.
Yes. So this is a later chapter. This is like chapter 13. And one of our ensemble, maybe heroes, maybe not so much, finds himself in a pit in a storm. Stephen woke choking on rain. It knifed down in sheets, cold needles hammering into his eyes, mouth, and nose until every breath felt borrowed. The pit was filling fast, mud sucking at his legs, water already lapping at his waist. He wasn't alone. At first, he thought it was just the carcass sagging over the stakes. Then it twitched. A claw snapped out of the dark, loud enough to crack wood. Not a hand, not anything human. Another pincher followed, crab-like, slamming against the pit wall in a spray of rain. Its torso heaved, mandibles splitting the face open, froth boiling from what might have once been a throat. Then two eyes, two vast orbs, faceted like a fly's, jittering with fractured light. They found him all at once. The Skin Man had been here. The sound it made was wrong, an insect's shriek rasping through ruined lungs, the pitch rattling Stephen's cracked ribs. The only thing keeping him alive was the wood. 3 stakes punched clean through its body, angling inward, pinning it like meat on a spit. The trap wasn't just made to kill, it was made to hold. For debtors, for hybrids, and maybe for men like him. Stephen pressed back against the wall, heart jackhammering. Each thrash drove its claws closer, spraying him with spit and rain. The water at its waist churned black with blood, the stink sharp enough to burn his sinuses. He tried to climb. Boots slid on slick stone, fingers clawing mud. The antlers caught, tines dragging through the dirt with the sound of cartilage tearing. Each pull lit his ribs on fire, strength draining faster than the water climbed. The hybrid screamed again, ichor spilling down the stakes in ribbons that bled into the rising pool. Stevens sagged back, chest heaving, water now lapping at his ribs. Luckily, he'd missed the spikes. Unluckily, he was still in the pit. Rain hammered down like nails into a coffin.
Awesome. Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And last, but certainly not least, Joe Compton's We the Moral Majority.
So this is a crime thriller. It follows Detective Janelle Pachenko. Sorry, Brian, it's in first person. And it is her and her partner are investigating the murder of a mayoral candidate, and they come across something that sends her into an alternate universe, basically, when she goes into a coma. That's when I realized the shot stopped. There was quiet. Too much quiet. I noticed the TV was on, but that cable box on top of the TV was, First and foremost, I thought it was odd that it sat on top of the TV, where there was clearly a stand with a shelf for it. Then I wondered why the channels kept changing in descending numerical sequence, too. Fuck! I grabbed Arlo by the collar, and the two of us jumped to our feet and sprinted down the hallway. Our feet had reached the threshold of the front doorway, but as we stepped there, it was the last thing our feet would touch before being hurled into the air. I never felt so much pain in my life as I landed on my wounded arm, but I didn't just land and stop. I skipped. And as I did, I felt the impact of the ground on my body, like running into a wall and not stopping as you hit it. Everything was blurry, then black. I saw nothing. The last thing I remembered was the unusual warmth wrapping around me. And then I heard this rustling. It was like paper crumpling all of a sudden, but right up against my ear. I heard faint, distant calls of my name. My eyes fluttered. I startled for a moment, realizing there was this hand-woven blanket covering my body like a heavy bandage. Whoa there, sweetheart. This incredibly strong hand pressed down on my shoulder, and a sudden calm came over me. You've had quite the accident. Still not able to open my eyes, but I felt, cared for. And that seemed to calm me down just a little bit. I called out, "What happened? Where am I? Why did my voice sound all breathy and demure? Shh, it's all right." When I felt a tinge of light smack me in the face and try to press through my closed eyes, I began to slowly open them. That's when I looked up, and there was the most handsome man on God's green earth staring back at me with those gorgeous baby blue eyes. There was my husband, Jack.
Awesome. Excellent. Thank you for sharing that with the people, Joe.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's get our last few comments before we get out of here. A.L. Mingle was I'm a plotter pantser combo. Vanessa, I'm also a hybrid writer. I do outlining with the act of making it pretty on page is what I enjoy the most. Ryan, great topic here. I'm a pantser. Once I have an idea, I just write the story and edits come later. And Vanessa needs to run. Thanks very much for the panel. Great job. Can't agree more. Thank you all so much for being here. Really do appreciate it. I want to thank everyone who's watching and who's watching in the future. Remember to like and subscribe. So if we get out of here, Joe, let's start with you. Tell people where they can find you on the web.
Right here. Go indie now. This is me. I'm here more than I'm not. And you can just find everything we do here at Go Indie Now. I don't really have any personal pages other than my Facebook, which you're welcome to friend me on Facebook, Joe Compton. But yeah, I'm usually Go Indie Now for everything else.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for being on the panel today.
Thank you for having me.
Yep. Tony, hope your first time was good.
It was fun. I really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me on here. You can find all of my stuff at tonyserecchia.com. You can friend me on Facebook, but it gets a little political. So if you'd rather avoid the politics, friend me at my storyteller page and not my personal page.
Excellent. Thank you. Yep. And that's a good warning for everybody, right? I think we're all a little political these days. Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
Fair warning.
Juliet?
Yeah, you can find me at AboveTheRainCollective.com. You can find me on social media. I'm also very political, but if you like me, then you're just going to have to deal with that. So, yeah.
That's right. I'm glad to see that you have recovered from your issue.
For now.
Yeah. Thank you for being here with us and sticking with us through the storm. And Brian?
I want to basically, if you've seen me on social media, it's at author Brian Tan, Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, Threads. My Facebook, look, I'm sharing more idiotic reels that are going to make you shake your head and wonder why you friend requested me in the first place. I'm getting through things because this world is stupid and it's filled with even dumber ideas, but hey, they're ideas to have. I guess I'm a bit more political. I've said what I've said in the fact that there are differences of opinion, but there's things that I won't write off as a difference of opinion. Like it, lump it, I'll sleep well either way.
There we go. Appreciate being here. All right. Thanks, everyone. Again, thanks for watching. Leave a comment, like, and subscribe. And Joe, what time is it?
Always time to go indie now.
Thanks, folks.